these comments are deliberately meant to make us all, wake up, sit up, get a bit frightened, think about the world and think about our armed forces. It's not a coincidence that it's military chiefs who are saying, if we don't do something, we might end up with a situation where we might have some sort of national service or conscription, because they are very, very unhappy. The army is down to 73,000, having been promised a few years ago that it wouldn't go fewer than 100,000. So I'm not saying take it with a pinch of salt, but I am saying I have sympathy with military chiefs who have been shouting from the rooftops for some time that we're spread too thin. Equally, there are plenty of countries in the world that have some sort of national service. We tend to think of Israel or China or Korea or Russia, but actually there are plenty of European countries that also do it. And there's a little bit of me that thinks, would that be such a terrible thing? Having said that, I have a child who's turning 16, a boy who's turning 16 next week. And of course, as a mother, it sends total chills down my spine, the thought that I could be in that situation where a child of mine would be forcibly made to sign up for a couple of years.
Well, one of the most depressing conversations I've had, actually just in the last 24 hours, was with a young, actually very distinguished veteran who's been following this story and said to me, you know what, I wouldn't fight for my country anymore because I'm not sure what my country is. And look, I think we've got to take that comment really, really seriously. We have lost our identity to such an extent, and we have become so multicultural that I don't think we could actually make a conscription of the type that's being described here work effectively.
I don't understand what you're saying, Isabel. I mean, if we are at war with Russia and if we don't have enough soldiers,
are we
still might need to
Are we united enough to do that?
You make a brilliant point. We did this at the weekend, and that's what everyone who was phoning in is saying. They don't recognise the country. The pace of immigration has been far too high. They don't share the same values, morals, ethics, etc. But I do think this is a national disgrace. I think it's managed decline on the part of successive governments, actually. When you look at the numbers, you mentioned 74,000. The decline is so steep that in 10 years, we're going to lose another 20,000 army personnel. You could fit them all in a stadium. That's how bad this is. We only have 29,000 in the Navy at the moment. You've got companies like Capita recruiting. Capita doesn't have a great track record at the best of times. What are we doing? This actually reminds me of growing up in the 1980s. I don't know if you're old enough to remember it, but the frightening nuclear war ads that were run on television the whole time. I think this is a very unstable time.
I was just thinking exactly that.
Were you?
I was thinking did Blue Peter do a show where they told you how to build a bunker or something?
Yeah.
I mean, it was something on those lines.
But you remember those
there was
things?
that era where you thought, wow, is this really going to happen? Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Two Tribes, all of that kind of era. There was that sense, and now here we are kind of reliving that potential of the West versus the Russians in particular and others.
And just to say about the numbers that you cited there, I mean, those are a completely false, they provide a very false impression of how big or whatever it is that actually remains, because at any one time, I'm afraid only a fraction of those people are actually battle ready, as it were. I mean, I spent 2 years, best part of, studying the state of the armed forces not that long ago. And, I mean, when you actually look at how many people could go to war next week, you would be shocked.
So 12 months ago, we're speaking to military experts, and they were saying it's not about how many foot soldiers we have, it's all going to be digital warfare, and that's where we should be concentrating. We don't need to have lots of soldiers on the foot, ready to go with their guns. Suddenly that's changed, and I agree with you that they're doing this because the army chiefs want more cash, which they've been moaning about for basically a decade. But if you're talking about multiculturalism and what this country is and who we are, it's working-class white boys who get put in the army. The poorest people in society are the ones who are going to be put on the front line. It's not the rich people. It's you put a poor person, and the army targets the poorest areas of the country. They target something like your income for the household is less than £10,000.
Well, it gives them great opportunities.
But you give them
really does.
So
turns their lives around.
That's what they say. It can turn their life around. But actually, Isabel, for 16-year-old boys, white English boys in this country, 1 in 3 drop out before they've even completed training. So then they've not got any qualifications from school, they've not done college degrees, they've gone into the army for less than 2 years, dropped out, and now they're nowhere. So actually, this is not a good thing for.
Well, that's 2 in 3 whose lives have been turned around, who've been put on a course that they might not otherwise have had, that actually potentially have a future and are learning amazing transferable skills.